Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. They said their fleet was invincible, then humans did the impossible. They came without warnings. Captain Nadia Reeves stood frozen on the bridge of the UES Defiant, Earth's newest orbital defense platform. The holographic display before her showed impossibilities, spatial distortions forming like wounds in the fabric of reality itself, bleeding into existence around Earth's orbit. "Contact imminent," announced Tactical Officer Bennett, his voice unnaturally calm. "Multiple signatures, larger than anything in our database." Nadia's breath caught in her throat as the first vessel emerged. It was massive, shaped like an obsidian arrowhead that seemed to devour light rather than reflect it. Behind it came another, then dozens more, until the display showed hundreds of vessels arranging themselves in a perfect geometric formation. "Open all emergency channels," Nadia ordered. "Get me Earth Command immediately." The Krell Dominion had arrived. Humanity had heard whispers about them from the few alien allies they'd made since achieving faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. An ancient empire that expanded through conquest, leaving broken civilizations and barren worlds in their wake. But the stories had seemed like distant nightmares until now. A crackle of static burst across every communication channel, followed by a single word in perfectly translated English: "Submit." Nadia exchanged glances with her executive officer, Marcus Teller. His dark eyes reflected the same cold fear she felt. "They've bypassed all encryption," Marcus whispered. "They're broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously." From the tactical station, Bennett looked up, his face ashen. "Captain, they're deploying smaller vessels, attack formation." "Battle stations," Nadia ordered, her voice finding strength in procedure. "Activate defense grid, coordinate with all orbital platforms." She hit the emergency broadcast button. "This is Captain Nadia Reeves of Earth Defense. All civilian vessels evacuate to emergency coordinates immediately. This is not a drill." The voice came again, emotionless yet somehow resonating with ancient malice. "Your species will serve. Resistance will result in exemplary punishment. You have one planetary rotation to surrender your governing bodies." The largest Krell vessel shifted position, its hull rippling with energy. A beam of sickly green light lanced out, striking one of Earth's orbital monitoring stations. The station didn't explode, it simply ceased to exist, leaving nothing but dispersing particles. "What was that?" Marcus breathed. "Matter dissolution," Bennett replied, checking his readings. "They just unmade it." Nadia's mind raced. Earth's united fleet consisted of barely 50 combat-capable vessels, most retrofitted exploration ships never designed for war. The Krell had hundreds, perhaps thousands, and technology that made humanity's greatest achievements look like children's toys. "Get me Admiral Yoshida," she ordered, "now." Within minutes, the weathered face of Fleet Admiral Takeo Yoshida appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Earth Command was a flurry of activity, officers rushing between stations as alerts flashed across every display. "Captain Reeves reports. The Krell Dominion has arrived in force, Admiral. They're demanding our surrender. They've already destroyed monitoring Station Echo with technology unlike anything we've seen." Yoshida's expression remained stoic, but Nadia caught the flicker of fear in his eyes. "We received their broadcast. United Earth Government is in emergency session. Hold your position but do not engage unless attacked directly." "Sir, with respect, if we wait." "Those are your orders, Captain," Yoshida interrupted. "We need time to coordinate our response." Yoshida out. The screen went dark, leaving Nadia staring at her reflection. She turned to the bridge crew, all watching her with expectant eyes. "You heard the Admiral. Maintain defensive posture. Monitor all Krell movements." Hours passed in tense silence. The Krell fleet remained perfectly still, hundreds of black ships suspended like a net around Earth. Reports flooded in from across the solar system, Mars colony going dark, the mining outpost on Europa destroyed, civilian ships attempting to flee the system being systematically intercepted. Then came the demonstration. Without warning, 3 Krell cruisers broke formation, accelerating toward Earth's moon. Before Defense Command could react, beams of that same sickly green energy struck the lunar surface. Massive chunks of the moon's crust simply vanished, leaving perfectly circular craters kilometers deep. Earth's response was immediate. Despite Yoshida's orders, the defense platforms around Luna opened fire, launching salvos of kinetic projectiles and energy weapons. The attacks dissipated harmlessly against invisible shields surrounding the Krell vessels. The counterattack was swift and merciless. 7 defense platforms disappeared in blinding flashes, 15,000 personnel gone in seconds. Alarms blared across the Defiance bridge as data streams showed the devastation. "They didn't even try to avoid our attacks," Bennett said, his voice hollow. "They wanted us to hit them, they wanted an excuse." The main communications channel crackled again. "Your resistance has been noted. Punishment will now commence." Nadia watched in horror as dozens of smaller Krell vessels descended toward Earth's atmosphere. Cities around the world reported massive ships hovering above them, casting mile-wide shadows across terrified populations. "They're targeting population centers," Marcus reported, scanning incoming data. "Shanghai, New York, Lagos, Cairo." The Krell message continued, implacable. "Observe the cost of defiance." What happened next would be burned into humanity's collective memory forever. The Krell didn't target military installations or government buildings. Instead, precisely calculated strikes hit cultural landmarks: the pyramids of Giza, the Statue of Liberty, the Great Wall, symbols of human achievement and identity, each vaporized without a trace. "They're not trying to defeat us," Nadia realized aloud. "They're trying to break us." Admiral Yashida's face appeared on screen again, lines of exhaustion already deepening around his eyes. "Captain Reeves, you're being reassigned. The UEG has authorized implementation of Protocol Omega." Nadia's blood ran cold. Protocol Omega was a theoretical last-resort strategy, never meant to be actually deployed. It called for sacrificing strategic assets to buy time while Earth's scattered forces regrouped for a final, desperate counterattack. "Sir, the Defiant is one of our most advanced platforms. We can still." "That's precisely why you're being reassigned," Yashida cut in. "We need you to command the Harbinger." The bridge fell silent. The Harbinger was Earth's most closely guarded secret, an experimental warship built with hybrid human-alien technology hidden in a stealth facility beneath the Pacific Ocean. It was rumored to have capabilities beyond conventional understanding, but was considered too unstable for deployment. "Transmitting coordinates now," Yashida continued. "Your executive officer will assume command of the Defiant." Marcus straightened beside her, his expression resolute. "The Defiant will serve as bait, Captain," Yashida explained, his voice softening slightly. "Along with our other visible assets, we need to convince the Krell they've broken our primary defense line." Nadia understood the implication. The Defiant would not survive this mission. "It's been an honor, Marcus," she said, extending her hand. He took it firmly. "The honor's been mine, Captain." As Nadia prepared to transfer to the emergency shuttle, Marcus called after her. "What they don't understand about humans, Captain. We're at our most dangerous when we're cornered." Nadia nodded. "Make them regret coming here, Commander." 12 hours later, Nadia stood in the cavernous hangar bay of the Harbinger, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Around her, a hastily assembled crew of Earth's most brilliant minds, engineers, tacticians, scientists, prepared for what might be humanity's final stand. The massive viewscreen showed what remained of Earth's defense fleet engaging the Krell in a desperate battle. The Defiant, under Marcus's command, led a valiant charge that managed to damage two smaller Krell vessels before being enveloped in green energy and disintegrating. Nadia closed her eyes briefly, honoring her fallen comrades. Then she turned to the assembled crew of the Harbinger. "They think they've won," she said, her voice carrying across the hangar. "They think humanity is broken, but they don't understand what we are." She gestured to the ship looming above them, sleek, alien, terrible in its beauty. "This vessel represents something the Krell have never encountered: human ingenuity combined with technologies we've adapted from a dozen alien cultures." She paced before them, making eye contact with each crew member. "They said their fleet was invincible. Now we're going to show them something impossible." As the Harbinger systems came online, pulsing with power that seemed to bend reality around them, Nadia took her place at the command chair. "Prepare for emergency surfacing," she ordered. "All hands to battle stations." The real fight for Earth was about to begin. Strategic Commander Darien Walsh had never believed in no-win scenarios. As he stood in the underground command center of Earth's last functional military headquarters, watching holographic displays track the systematic destruction of humanity's defenses, he refused to accept defeat. "They're methodical," he muttered, studying the Krell attack patterns. "Too methodical." The room around him buzzed with frantic activity. Officers relayed damage reports, while emergency coordinators tried to manage the evacuation of civilians from targeted cities. The atmosphere was thick with desperation. Fleet Admiral Yashida entered, looking like he'd aged years in days. "The Harbinger is online. Captain Reeves has assumed command." Walsh nodded, eyes never leaving the tactical display. "And Protocol Omega." Proceeding as planned, we're sacrificing our conventional forces to maintain the illusion that we're fighting a traditional war. Yashida's voice was hollow. It won't fool them for long. It doesn't need to, Walsh replied. Just long enough for me to implement Trickster Protocol. Yashida frowned. Trickster Protocol isn't authorized. The Security Council rejected it as too risky. Walsh finally turned from the display, his sharp features illuminated by the emergency lighting. With respect, Admiral, the Security Council isn't here anymore. He gestured to a report showing the destruction of Geneva, and we've moved beyond risk assessment to extinction management. After a long moment, Yashida nodded. What do you need? Everything we can salvage and volunteers. Walsh pulled up a new display. The Krell fight like machines, perfect, predictable formations. Every attack follows mathematical precision, but that precision is a weakness. They've never faced humans before. And humans are unpredictable, Yashida finished. Chaotically so, Walsh allowed himself a grim smile, especially when we have nothing left to lose. 12 hours later, Tactical Officer Prisha Sharma sat in the cockpit of a retrofitted mining vessel, staring at her unlikely crew, former miners, civilian pilots, and a handful of military personnel, all volunteers for what might be a suicide mission. Remember, she said, checking her systems, the Krell expect military vessels attacking in formation. They're not looking for mining ships on irregular trajectories. Her co-pilot, former asteroid miner Jin Hayashi, grunted, because no one would be crazy enough to attack those monsters in mining equipment. Exactly, Prisha replied, which is precisely why it's going to work. Similar conversations were happening across 50 other civilian vessels, cargo haulers, medical transports, even tourist shuttles, all modified under Walsh's directive to carry makeshift weapons and stealth technology. The plan was simple and desperate. While the remaining military forces engaged the Krell in conventional battle, drawing their attention and analytical resources, these civilian ships would approach from odd angles, using the debris of destroyed stations as cover, carrying payloads designed by the brilliant but eccentric Dr. Farida Hassan. Trickster actual to all units, Walsh's voice came through their comms. Phase 1 complete, the Krell have committed 70% of their force against our military assets. Begin Phase 2, good hunting. Prisha nodded to Jin. Let's show these aliens how humans fight when the rules don't matter anymore. In the command center, Walsh watched the civilian fleet scatter into predetermined positions, each moving in ways that defied tactical sense, exactly as planned. The Krell systems would struggle to identify them as threats until it was too late. Meanwhile, the Krell continued their methodical destruction of Earth's conventional forces. Military satellites, orbital platforms, and standard warships were being systematically eliminated. Earth's remaining fleet fought valiantly but hopelessly, their weapons barely scratching the Krell shields. They're too powerful, one of the junior officers whispered. Power isn't everything, Walsh replied. The most dangerous predator isn't always the strongest. On the main screen, a Krell dreadnought finished destroying Earth's largest orbital defense platform. As debris scattered across space, something changed in the Krell formation, a subtle shift that made Walsh lean forward. They're adapting, he said. They've realized our conventional defenses are nearly depleted. They're preparing for the occupation phase. Just as he'd predicted, the Krell began to break their perfect formation, individual ships moving toward predetermined positions around Earth to establish a containment grid. Walsh hit his comm. All Trickster units execute Phase 3 now. Aboard her mining vessel, Prisha received the order and nodded to Jin, beginning approach. Their ship drifted toward a Krell cruiser, engines minimal, weapons systems dark. To any sensors, they would appear to be nothing more than a damaged mining vessel, possibly with survivors aboard beneath notice. Similar approaches were happening across the theater, civilian ships playing dead or appearing to flee randomly, all gradually closing distance with Krell vessels. Dr. Hassan's invention was elegant in its simplicity. The Krell relied on advanced shielding that adapted to conventional weaponry, becoming stronger with each attack. But her team had discovered the shields had a fundamental flaw. They were calibrated to repel external energy and matter at high velocities. They've never encountered something as primitive as us, Hassan had explained. Why would their shields be designed to stop something as basic as a magnetic clamp? Each civilian ship carried dozens of small, magnetically shielded devices. Once attached to a Krell hull, they would bypass the shields entirely, not attacking them, but simply adhering to the surface beneath. Prisha's ship was now less than a kilometer from their target. Releasing payloads, she whispered, though the Krell couldn't hear her. Small, drone-like objects detached from her vessel, propelled by minimal thrusters toward the Krell cruiser. Across the battlefield, hundreds of similar devices approached Krell ships, too small and slow-moving to register as weapons. In the command center, Walsh held his breath. Everything depended on the next few minutes. First contact, reported his tactical officer. Magnetic adhesion successful. On the displays, tiny green dots appeared on the hulls of multiple Krell vessels, each representing one of Hassan's devices. The Krell showed no reaction, they hadn't detected the breach. Phase 3 complete, Walsh announced. Begin Phase 4. The devices weren't bombs or weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, they were something far more insidious: data injectors. Once attached to the Krell hulls, they began introducing subtle errors into the ship's external sensor arrays, nothing dramatic enough to be detected as sabotage, just enough to create small blind spots and misreadings. Simultaneously, the Harbinger under Captain Reeves' command emerged from the depths of the Pacific, its hybrid technology allowing it to approach the Krell fleet undetected. Unlike the conventional military vessels, the Harbinger moved in ways that defied the Krell's tactical algorithms, accelerating and decelerating in patterns that seemed random, its energy signature fluctuating wildly. "They can't track what they can't understand," Walsh murmured, watching the Harbinger's progress. The Krell, for the first time, appeared confused. Their perfect formation faltered as contradictory sensor readings caused individual ships to adjust positions based on flawed data. Small gaps appeared in their containment grid. "All trickster units, Phase 5, Walsh ordered. Fire in the hole." The true purpose of Dr. Hassan's devices was now revealed. Each contained a quantum resonator that, when activated, created a localized distortion in space-time. Nothing powerful enough to damage the Krell ships directly, but perfectly calibrated to interfere with their propulsion systems. Across the battlefield, Krell vessels suddenly lurched as their engines faltered. The distortions weren't powerful enough to disable the ships, but they created moments of vulnerability, moments that the civilian fleet immediately exploited. Prisha's mining vessel and others like it now revealed their hidden weapons. Molecular disruptors salvaged from the ships of Earth's alien allies, modified to fire through the gaps in Krell shielding created by the sensor errors. "Target their propulsion nodes," Walsh instructed over the comm. "Don't try to destroy them, just immobilize them." Battle transformed. Where before it had been a one-sided slaughter, now it became chaotic. Civilian vessels darted between massive Krell ships, firing precise shots at vulnerable points while the confused aliens struggled to target the small, erratically moving craft. One Krell cruiser, its propulsion severely damaged, drifted into the path of another. The collision wasn't catastrophic, but it forced both ships to redirect power to stabilization systems, creating more openings for human attacks. In the command center, Admiral Yoshida watched in astonishment. "It's working," he breathed. Walsh nodded, though his expression remained tense. Phase 1 of working, we're irritating them, not defeating them. But irritation was enough to create opportunity. As the Krell fleet struggled to adapt to these unconventional tactics, their communication patterns changed. Instead of the perfectly synchronized network they displayed earlier, individual ships began broadcasting more frequently, attempting to coordinate their response to this unexpected threat. "They're centralizing their command," Walsh noted, "just as I hoped." The increased communications revealed what Walsh had been searching for: the location of the Krell command vessel. Unlike human fleets, where the flagship was obvious, the Krell distributed command functions across their armada, making targeting leadership nearly impossible. But under stress, they were falling back on more centralized control. "All units continue harassment patterns," Walsh ordered. "Harbinger, do you have the target?" Captain Reeves' voice came through, calm and determined. "Confirmed, moving to intercept." As the civilian fleet continued their erratic attacks, drawing Krell attention and resources, the Harbinger slipped through the chaos, heading directly for the newly identified command vessel. "This is where we find out if our gamble pays off," Walsh said quietly to Yoshida. The Admiral placed a hand on his shoulder. "Either way, you've given humanity something we didn't have before." "What's that?" "A chance." Aboard her mining vessel, Prisha executed a tight turn around a damaged Krell ship, her crew firing disruptors at exposed systems. The vessel shuddered as a glancing hit from Krell weapons scorched their hull. "Shields at 30%, Jin reported, hands flying over the controls. "One more hit like that and we're done." "We just need to keep them busy a little longer," Prisha replied, checking the tactical display. She could see the Harbinger closing in on its target, nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. Across the communications network, similar reports came in from other civilian vessels, damaged systems, failing shields, casualties mounting, but none retreated. They had all volunteered knowing the likely outcome. In the command center, Walsh watched the Harbinger reach its position. "Captain Reeves, you are cleared for Sunburst Protocol." "Acknowledged," came the reply, "deploying payload in 3, 2, 1." The Harbinger released what appeared to be a small satellite directly in the path of the Krell command vessel. The device floated, seemingly harmless, until the Krell ship passed within a certain range. Then it activated. Unlike the quantum disruptors used by the civilian fleet, this device contained technology even most humans didn't understand. A gift from one of Earth's alien allies, shared in secret years ago for a moment exactly like this. A pulse of golden energy expanded outward, washing over the Krell command vessel. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a computer rebooting, the ship's exterior lights flickered and went dark. "Direct hit," Reeves reported. "Cognitive disruptor functioning as expected." The device hadn't damaged the ship physically. Instead, it had temporarily disrupted the connection between the ship's systems and the Krell controlling them, essentially giving the vessel a momentary bout of amnesia. In that critical window, as the Krell command structure faltered, Walsh gave his final order. "All units implement Sunrise Protocol. I repeat, Sunrise Protocol is now active." Across Earth's surface, concealed installations activated, launching thousands of small, autonomous drones into the upper atmosphere. Each carried a fragment of a distributed AI system designed by Dr. Hassan's team not to attack the Krell directly, but to infiltrate their now vulnerable communication network. The AI didn't attempt to seize control of Krell ships or systems. Instead, it did something far more effective. It introduced subtle contradictions into their tactical data, creating a cascade of confusion and hesitation throughout their fleet. Walsh watched as the Krell formation, once perfect and terrifying, began to disintegrate into disorganized clusters. Ships moved at cross purposes, some retreating to defensive positions while others pressed attacks against phantom targets. "They're fighting themselves," Yashida observed, wonder in his voice. "Not exactly," Walsh replied. "They're paralyzed by contradictory information. They can't trust their own data anymore." It wouldn't last long. The Krell would eventually purge the infiltration and recalibrate their systems. But it didn't need to last long. "Captain Reeves," Walsh called, "you have your opening." On the main display, the Harbinger accelerated toward the heart of the Krell fleet, its hybrid systems now operating at full capacity. The ship moved in ways that defied physics as humans understood it, energy crackling around its hull. "What is she doing?" someone asked. Walsh's expression was grim, showing them something impossible. Lieutenant Imani Akafer knew what it meant to be invisible. As the commanding officer of the stealth vessel Phantom, invisibility wasn't just her mission, it was her existence. The Phantom hung in the darkness of space, its hull absorbing rather than reflecting light, its heat signature dispersed through revolutionary cooling systems. To the naked eye and most scanners, it simply wasn't there, which was exactly what humanity needed now. "Status report," Imani ordered, her voice barely above a whisper though the Krell couldn't possibly hear her. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Joaquin Vargas, studied his console. "We're holding position behind the debris field of Orbital Station 7. The Krell fleet is in disarray following Commander Walsh's attack, but they're recovering faster than predicted." Imani nodded, unsurprised. The Krell's technological superiority meant they wouldn't remain confused for long. Walsh's brilliant strategy had bought them precious time, nothing more. "And the Harbinger?" she asked. Joaquin's expression tightened. "Captain Reeves engaged the Krell command vessel directly. They didn't make it." A moment of silence fell across the Phantom's bridge. The Harbinger's sacrifice had been part of the plan, a calculated loss to create this opportunity, but that didn't make it easier to accept. "They died so we could complete our mission," Imani said finally. "Let's not waste their sacrifice." The mission was called Ghost Protocol, and it was perhaps the most desperate gambit in human military history. While Walsh's forces engaged the Krell directly and the Harbinger delivered its devastating strike, the Phantom would slip behind enemy lines with a payload that could change the course of the war. "Prepare for insertion," Imani ordered, activating phase shift drive. The phase shift drive was experimental technology, dangerous and unpredictable. It didn't move the ship through space so much as it allowed it to temporarily exist slightly out of phase with normal reality, making it truly ghost-like, capable of passing through solid matter for brief periods. The ship hummed as the drive engaged, systems flickering as reality itself seemed to bend around them. The sensation was disorienting, like being underwater while still breathing air. Phase shift stable, reported Chief Engineer Tomas Novik, his fingers dancing across his console to maintain the delicate balance. We have 4 minutes before molecular destabilization begins. 4 minutes to pass through the Krell blockade and reach their target. No pressure. Take us in, Imani ordered, full stealth protocols. The Phantom slipped forward, moving through the debris field without disturbing a single fragment. As they approached the Krell formation, Imani felt her heart pound against her ribs. The phase shift technology had never been tested against Krell sensors, if they could detect the quantum fluctuations. They passed within 100 meters of a Krell destroyer, close enough to see the alien script etched into its obsidian hull. No reaction, no sudden targeting locks or alarm signals. "We're through the first line," Joquin whispered, tension evident in his voice. The target lay ahead, a massive structure the size of a small moon that had emerged from the largest Krell vessel shortly after Walsh's attack. Intelligence suggested it was a forward command center, the nexus of Krell operations in the Earth system. 2 minutes of phase shift remaining, Tomas warned, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked to stabilize the increasingly erratic drive. "That's all we need," Imani assured him, though she was far from certain. "Prepare the payload for deployment." The payload was designated Nemesis, a quantum virus developed by Dr. Hassan's team, designed to infiltrate Krell systems at their most fundamental level. Unlike the temporary confusion caused by Walsh's attack, Nemesis would permanently alter Krell command protocols, inserting a fatal flaw that would grow more pronounced over time. The Phantom closed on the command center, now less than a kilometer away. Massive energy signatures radiated from the structure, systems more complex than anything humans had encountered before. "Phase shift failing," Tomas announced, his voice tight. 1 minute maximum. Imani made her decision. "Take us in closer, we need to be within optimal range for deployment." The ship accelerated, pushing deeper into enemy territory. They were now surrounded by Krell vessels, any one of which could destroy them instantly if the phase shift failed. 800 meters, Joquin reported, 700, 600. "Phase shift critical," Tomas warned, 30 seconds. Imani's hands tightened on the arms of her command chair. "Prepare Nemesis for deployment, target their central processing node." The Phantom's specialized systems identified the command center's most vulnerable point, a nexus where multiple data streams converged, likely their version of a central computer core. 500 meters, Joquin counted down, 400, 300. "Phase shift collapsing," Tomas shouted. "We're reverting to normal space in 15 seconds. "Deploy Nemesis," Imani ordered, "now." A small projectile launched from the Phantom, propelled not by conventional engines but by a burst of targeted quantum particles. It crossed the remaining distance in milliseconds, impacting the command center's hull just as the Phantom's phase shift drive failed completely. Reality snapped back into focus around them, the ship shuddering violently as it fully materialized. Alarms blared across every station. "We're visible," Joquin reported unnecessarily, Krell vessels locking weapons. Imani had expected this. The plan had never included an extraction. Initiating secondary protocol, all power to engines. The Phantom's engines flared to life, pushing the ship away from the command center at maximum acceleration. Not to escape, that was impossible, but to draw attention away from the payload they'd just delivered. "Nemesis status," Imani demanded. "Payload successfully embedded," Joquin confirmed, checking his readings. "Virus deployment initiated." That was all that mattered. Whatever happened next, they'd completed their mission. The first Krell energy beam sliced past them, missing by meters. The second struck their aft shield, overloading it instantly. The ship bucked like a wounded animal. "Hull breach, Deck 3, Tomas reported. "Emergency containment holding." Imani opened a channel to her entire crew. "This is Lieutenant Akafer. Nemesis has been successfully deployed. It's been an honor serving with you all." She didn't need to explain further. Everyone aboard the Phantom had volunteered, knowing this was likely a one-way mission. The ship continued its desperate evasive maneuvers, drawing as many Krell vessels away from the command center as possible, giving Nemesis time to work. Deep within the Krell command structure, the quantum virus began its insidious work. Unlike conventional cyberweapons, Nemesis operated at the quantum level, exploiting the fundamental principles upon which Krell technology was built. It started with a single misaligned calculation, trivial, almost unnoticeable. But that error propagated, creating microscopic flaws in the command center's processing matrix. Those flaws, in turn, generated more errors, spreading through the system like cracks in ice. The Krell, for all their technological advancement, had never encountered anything like Nemesis. Their systems were built on perfect logic mathematical precision that had served them for millennia. They had no defenses against a weapon that turned that precision against them. Aboard the Phantom, now heavily damaged and surrounded by Krell vessels, Imani watched her tactical display with grim satisfaction. The command center's energy signature was fluctuating wildly, evidence that Nemesis was working. "They're trying to contain it," Joquin reported, reading the energy patterns. "Initiating system purges, but Nemesis is adapting faster than they can respond." Another energy beam struck the Phantom, this one tearing through the lower decks. The ship's artificial gravity failed, emergency lighting casting the bridge in a bloody red glow. "Life support critical," Tomas announced calmly as if reporting the weather. 5 minutes remaining. Imani nodded, accepting the inevitable. "Keep broadcasting our sensor data back to Earth. They need to know if Nemesis succeeds." The Krell vessels tightened their circle around the Phantom, preparing to deliver the killing blow. But Imani's attention was fixed on the command center, where energy fluctuations had given way to visible distortions in the structure itself. "It's working," she breathed. "Nemesis is overriding their core protocols." The Krell command center began to pulse with erratic energy discharges, sections of its hull darkening as systems failed. The surrounding Krell vessels seemed to hesitate, their perfect coordination faltering as contradictory orders flooded their network. "They can't purge it," Joquin realized, wonder in his voice. "Nemesis has integrated too deeply." Imani allowed herself a small smile. "Send the confirmation code to Earth Command, Ghost Protocol successful." As if in response to her words, the Krell vessels surrounding the Phantom suddenly broke formation, their movements becoming erratic. Some drifted away, others fired weapons at empty space, and a few simply went dark, their systems apparently shutting down completely. "They're losing cohesion," Joquin reported, disbelief evident in his voice. "The entire fleet is being affected." For the first time since the invasion began, Imani felt something dangerously close to hope. Nemesis wasn't just disrupting the command center, it was spreading through the entire Krell network, carried by their own communication protocols. "We might have a chance," she whispered. Another blast rocked the Phantom, this one crippling their remaining engines. The ship began to drift, life support failing across multiple decks. 2 minutes of breathable air, Tomas reported, maybe less. Imani unstrapped from her command chair, floating in the zero gravity of the dying ship. "Open a channel to the entire crew." When the connection was established, she took a deep breath. "This is Lieutenant Okafor. Ghost Protocol has succeeded beyond our expectations. Nemesis is spreading throughout the Krell fleet, disrupting their ability to coordinate attacks." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew, young men and women who had volunteered for what they knew was likely a suicide mission. "I won't lie to you, the Phantom is critically damaged and we have no means of escape, but what we've accomplished here today may save billions of lives. Earth now has a fighting chance." She could see the acceptance in their eyes, the pride mixed with the natural fear of death. "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve with you," she finished. "In the time we have left, I suggest we bear witness to what we've accomplished." Together, they watched through the viewport as the massive Krell command center began to tear itself apart, riven by the contradictory commands generated by Nemesis. Surrounding vessels collided with each other, fired upon their own allies, or simply drifted powerless through space. "Beautiful," Joquin whispered. Imani nodded. "Humans have always been underestimated. They thought we'd surrender or fight like they do with precision and predictability. They didn't understand what they were facing." "What were they facing?" Tomas asked, his voice growing weaker as oxygen levels dropped. Imani's eyes never left the viewport, watching as humanity's greatest enemy tore itself apart. "A species that turns disadvantage into strength. When we can't overpower our enemies, we outsmart them. When we can't outrun them, we hide and strike from the shadows. When we can't win by their rules, we change the game entirely." Bridge was silent save for the fatting alarms and the increasingly labored breathing of the crew. Through the viewport, they could see Earth in the distance, a blue jewel against the blackness of space, still surrounded by Krell vessels but now with a fighting chance. "We never needed to be stronger," Imani said softly. "We just needed to be human." As the last of the Phantom systems failed and darkness closed in, Imani Okafor closed her eyes, content in the knowledge that Ghost Protocol had succeeded. The impossible had been accomplished. And somewhere in the void, as if in tribute to their sacrifice, the Krell Command Center exploded in a silent, beautiful burst of light. In Earth's Emergency Command Center, Commander Walsh watched the final transmission from the Phantom with a mixture of grief and triumph. Lieutenant Akafer and her crew were gone, but their sacrifice had changed everything. The Krell fleet is in chaos, reported a tactical officer. They've ceased all coordinated attacks. Some vessels appear to be attacking each other. Walsh nodded grimly. Nemesis is working its way through their entire network. They built their systems on perfect logic and synchronization, exactly the weaknesses we needed to exploit. Admiral Yashida stepped to his side, eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the disintegrating Krell formation. We've hurt them, but they're still powerful. Individual ships remain functional and there are hundreds of them. We don't need to destroy them all, Walsh replied. We just needed to break their unified front. Give Engineer Kapoor the signal it's time for Phase 4. Yashida raised an eyebrow. You're still counting on an unproven technology based on theoretical physics. Walsh allowed himself a small smile. After what we've seen today, Admiral, I'm willing to bet on human ingenuity over alien might every time. He turned back to the display, watching as Nemesis continued its work, spreading confusion and chaos through the once invincible Krell fleet. Lieutenant Akafer gave us our chance, he said quietly. Now Engineer Kapoor will give us our victory. Ravi Kapoor had never considered himself a soldier. As chief engineer of the Quantum Physics Division at Luna Base, his battles had always been fought on whiteboards and in simulation chambers, not on bloody battlefields. Yet here he was in the bowels of a half-destroyed research facility beneath the Himalayas, working desperately to complete a device that might be humanity's last hope. Pass me the quantum stabilizer, he said to his assistant, Dr. Layla Nazari. His voice was calm despite the circumstances, despite the fact that somewhere above them, the remains of Earth's forces were fighting a losing battle against an enemy that outmatched them in every conventional way. Layla handed him the delicate instrument, her dark eyes reflecting the blue glow of the experimental device before them. The power coupling is reaching critical temperature again, she warned. Ravi nodded, adjusting the settings. We have to push it past the safety thresholds. There's no time for caution. What they were building had no official name in any scientific journal. Among the small team of physicists who had theorized its existence, it was simply called the inverter. If it worked, and that remained a massive if, it would exploit a fundamental property of the universe that even the Krell, for all their advanced technology, had never weaponized. The facility shuddered as another bombardment struck the mountain above them. Dust rained from the ceiling, settling on the complex array of equipment surrounding the central chamber. They're getting closer, Dr. Wei Chen observed, not looking up from his calculations. The shielding won't hold much longer. Then we work faster, Ravi replied, his hands moving with practiced precision despite the tremors running through the facility. Walsh bought us time. Akafer gave us an opening. We can't waste their sacrifices. News of the Ghost Protocol's success had reached them an hour ago, Lieutenant Akafer and the Phantom's crew giving their lives to deploy Nemesis into the heart of the Krell command structure. The quantum virus was working better than anyone had dared hope, spreading confusion through the enemy fleet, turning their perfect synchronization against them. But it wasn't enough. The Krell were adapting, individual ships operating autonomously as their network failed. They were still overwhelmingly powerful, and Earth's defenses were nearly exhausted. Synchronizing quantum field generators, Layla announced, her fingers flying across the control panel. Field stability at 67%. We need at least 85% for sustainable inversion, Wei reminded them unnecessarily. Ravi wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a smudge of grease. I know, recalibrating the harmonic resonators. The inverter represented a convergence of multiple scientific disciplines, quantum mechanics, gravitational physics, and theories about the fundamental nature of reality itself. At its core was an insight Ravi had stumbled upon 3 years earlier while studying anomalies in spatial dimensions. The universe had symmetry, not just in its physical laws but in its very fabric. Where there was matter, there could be antimatter. Where there was energy, there could be anti-energy. And where there was space itself, the dimensional fabric of reality, there could theoretically be anti-space. Another impact shook the facility, more violent than before. Warning lights flashed across the chamber as backup generators kicked in. Primary power grid down, Wei reported. We're on emergency systems now. Through the intercom came the voice of Colonel Diane Parker, the military officer tasked with defending the facility. Dr. Kapoor, we've got multiple Krell dropships approaching. Ground forces will breach the outer perimeter in approximately 15 minutes. Ravi exchanged glances with his team. 15 minutes. It wouldn't be enough time to complete the calibrations, test the device, and deploy it. Colonel, we need more time, he responded. That's not an option, Doctor. We'll hold them as long as we can, but you need to be prepared for emergency protocols. Emergency protocols. They all knew what that meant. If the facility was in danger of being captured, they would destroy it and themselves, rather than let the Krell obtain the technology they were developing. Ravi made a decision. We're skipping final calibration, prepare for direct implementation. Wei looked up sharply. Ravi, without proper calibration, the quantum field could collapse catastrophically. We could create a tear in spacetime that. That what? Ravi interrupted. Destroys the planet? The Krell will do that anyway if we fail. He softened his tone. We don't have a choice, Wei. Sometimes science requires a leap of faith. After a moment, Wei nodded reluctantly. I'll reconfigure the deployment sequence for immediate activation. Layla moved to Ravi's side as they worked, her voice low. Even if we bypass the calibration, we still need a way to deliver the device to the primary target. The primary target was the largest remaining Krell vessel, a dreadnought that had moved into low Earth orbit after the confusion caused by Nemesis had disrupted their formation. Intelligence suggested it contained a secondary command structure that was attempting to re-establish control over the fleet. We have transport ships standing by, Ravi began, but Layla was already shaking her head. They'd never get close enough. The dreadnought's defenses are still fully operational. Another explosion rocked the facility closer this time. The lights flickered ominously. Dr. Kapoor, Colonel Parker's voice came through the intercom again, tension evident. Krell forces have breached the outer defenses. We have less than 10 minutes. Ravi stared at the inverter, the culmination of his life's work, humanity's last desperate gambit. They had the weapon but no way to deliver it. There is one possibility, Wei said suddenly, looking up from his console. The quantum entanglement drive. Ravi felt his blood run cold. The quantum entanglement drive was theoretical even by their standards, a propulsion system that could potentially teleport an object by exploiting the properties of entangled particles. They had built a prototype, but it had never been tested. The drive isn't stable, he protested. The targeting systems alone would require days of calibration. Not if we use a biological guidance system, Wei countered. Layla's eyes widened as she understood. You mean a pilot? That's suicide. The quantum stress would tear apart any living tissue. Not necessarily, Wei argued. If we modify the containment field to create a temporal bubble around the pilot compartment, they might survive long enough to guide the device to its target. Might, Ravi repeated, and even then there's no coming back. The facility shook again, and this time the lights went out completely before the emergency systems engaged, bathing everything in a red glow. Colonel Parker's voice was urgent. 5 minutes, Doctor, we're initiating facility lockdown protocols. They were out of options, out of time, out of alternatives. I'll do it, Ravi said quietly. Both Wei and Layla started to object, but he cut them off. I designed the inverter. I understand its operation better than anyone. If adjustments need to be made during deployment, I'm the most qualified. There must be another way, Layla pleaded. There isn't, he placed a hand on her shoulder. You and Wei need to finish the modifications to the quantum entanglement drive. I'll prepare the inverter for transport. As they worked feverishly to integrate the two systems, the sounds of battle grew closer. Distant explosions gave way to the distinctive whine of energy weapons and the staccato chatter of human railguns. Done, Wei announced finally, stepping back from the modified device. The entanglement drive is integrated with the inverter. The pilot compartment has basic controls, enough to make final targeting adjustments. Ravi nodded, surveying their creation. It wasn't elegant, a cobbled-together mass of advanced technology and jury-rigged components, but it was humanity's last hope. Colonel Parker appeared at the laboratory entrance, her uniform scorched and a bloody gash across her forehead. They've reached the inner perimeter. My team is setting up a final defensive position, but we won't hold them for long. We're ready, Ravi told her. The device needs to be moved to Launch Bay 3 for deployment. As Parker's remaining soldiers helped transport the inverter, Ravi took a moment with his colleagues. The theory is sound, he assured them. When the inverter activates, it will create a quantum inversion field that temporarily reverses the polarity of space itself around the target. For a brief moment, perhaps only seconds, everything within the field will experience a fundamental reversal of physical laws. Matter will behave like antimatter, Wei continued, energy like anti-energy. And the Krell ship, Parker asked. Will tear itself apart, Ravi finished. Its own mass and energy turned against it, and if our calculations are correct, the effect should cascade through any systems directly connected to it, including any Krell vessels linked to its command structure. They reached the launch bay, a small chamber with a retractable roof leading to the surface. The inverter was loaded onto a platform as the final preparations were made. Layla approached Ravi as he prepared to enter the pilot compartment. The temporal bubble will only protect you for approximately 40 seconds after activation. After that. I know, he said gently, it's enough time. Wei joined them, handing Ravi a small device. The targeting system, it's crude but it should get you close enough. The inverter's effect has a radius of approximately 2 kilometers, you don't need a direct hit. Ravi nodded, pocketing the device. Around them, the sounds of battle grew closer. The facility's final defenses wouldn't hold much longer. It's time, Colonel Parker announced. We'll cover your launch, but you need to go now. Ravi embraced his colleagues one last time. If this works, the Krell will learn that technological superiority isn't everything. Sometimes understanding the universe more deeply is the greatest weapon of all. He climbed into the cramped pilot compartment, sealing the hatch behind him. Through the small viewport, he could see Wei and Layla at the controls, preparing for launch. Colonel Parker and her remaining soldiers had taken defensive positions around the bay. The roof began to retract, revealing a night sky alight with the flashes of battle. In the distance, Ravi could see the massive silhouette of the Krell dreadnought, hovering ominously over what had once been northern India. Quantum entanglement drive engaging, Wei's voice came through the comms. Field stabilization at maximum. Ravi felt a strange vibration throughout his body as the drive powered up. The theory suggested he would experience a moment of complete disassociation as his particles entangled with their counterparts at the target destination. Launch in 3, 2, 1. The world dissolved into brilliant light, then absolute darkness. For an eternal instant, Ravi Kapoor existed everywhere and nowhere, his consciousness stretched across the quantum foam of reality itself. Then suddenly he was back, the pilot compartment materializing less than a kilometer from the Krell dreadnought. Through the viewport, he could see its massive hull, covered in alien technology beyond human understanding. Warning systems screamed as the dreadnought's defenses detected his presence. Energy weapons began tracking his position, preparing to fire. There was no time for fear, no time for doubt. Ravi activated the targeting system, aligning the inverter with the center of the massive vessel. The countdown began 30 seconds until full charge. The first energy blast from the dreadnought passed close enough to superheat the exterior of the pilot compartment. Temperature warnings flashed across his console. 20 seconds. Another blast, this one grazing the inverter itself. Damage reports cascaded across the screen, but the core remained intact. 10 seconds. The dreadnought's weapons locked on, preparing a barrage that would vaporize him completely. Ravi closed his eyes, thinking of Earth, of humanity, of all they had fought to protect. 5 seconds. For all of us, he whispered. 1 second. The inverter activated, its quantum field expanding outward at the speed of light. For a brief moment, Ravi glimpsed the impossible, space itself inverting, reality turning inside out around the Krell dreadnought. Then came the cascade. Where the dreadnought had been, a sphere of inverted space expanded, matter and energy becoming their opposites. The massive alien vessel didn't explode, it imploded, collapsing inward as its own mass became a force of destruction rather than cohesion. The effect spread, racing through quantum entanglement links to connected Krell vessels. One by one, they folded in on themselves, victims of the most fundamental laws of physics turned against them. In his final moments, as the temporal bubble failed and the quantum stress began to tear at his molecular structure, Ravi Kapoor smiled. He wouldn't live to see Earth rebuilt, to see humanity rise from the ashes of this terrible war. But he had given them the chance to do so. The universe around him inverted, consciousness expanding into infinity as his physical form dissolved into quantum potential. His last thought was not of fear or regret, but of profound satisfaction. They said their fleet was invincible. Then humans did the impossible. In Earth's emergency command center, Commander Walsh watched in awe as the largest Krell vessels vanished from their sensors, not with explosive destruction, but with a quieter, more fundamental annihilation. What just happened? Admiral Yoshida demanded, staring at the rapidly changing tactical display. Walsh's voice was quiet with respect. Engineer Kapoor happened, the inverter worked. Across the command center, stunned silence gave way to cautious hope as the tactical display continued to update. More Krell ships were disappearing, the cascade effect spreading further than they had dared hope. The remaining Krell vessels are retreating, reported the tactical officer, disbelief evident in her voice. They're breaking orbit, moving away from Earth at maximum acceleration. Yashida shook his head slowly. They're running, the invincible Krell are running from us. Not from us, Walsh corrected gently. From what we represent. The Krell based their empire on technological superiority, on perfect logic and overwhelming force. They've conquered countless worlds that fought as they did with conventional weapons and tactics. He gestured to the display where the remnants of the once mighty Krell armada fled in disarray. But they've never encountered a species like humans before. We don't fight by the rules. When outmatched, we innovate. When outgunned, we find weaknesses. When faced with impossible odds, we rewrite the possible. Admiral Yashida looked at him. You sound like you almost expected this outcome. Walsh allowed himself a small smile. Not expected, hoped. Throughout human history, our greatest strength has never been our technology or our resources. It's been our adaptability, our creativity in the face of destruction. The Krell thought they were invincible because they've never been truly tested. He looked out the reinforced window at the devastated landscape beyond, where fires still burned but would eventually be extinguished, where ruins stood but would eventually be rebuilt. We have been tested since the day we first stood upright on the African plains. Tested by predators, by nature, by each other. We've faced extinction countless times and survived because when our backs are against the wall, we discover what we're truly capable of. Reports were flooding in from around the world now, confirmation that Krell forces were withdrawing, that the invasion which had seemed unstoppable just days ago was ending not in human defeat but in alien retreat. There will be others, Yashida warned. The galaxy is vast, and we know now that it's filled with threats we can barely comprehend. Walsh nodded. Yes, and when they come, they'll find a humanity forged in the fire of the Krell invasion, stronger, more united, and with a reputation that will echo across the stars. What reputation is that? Yashida asked. Commander Walsh looked back at the tactical display, where the last Krell ships were vanishing into the depths of space. That we are the species that did the impossible, and will do it again if we have to. In the ruins of the Himalayan research facility, Wei Chen and Layla Nazari stood before the simple memorial they had erected. It bore only a name, Ravi Kapoor, but it represented so much more. He knew he wouldn't survive, Layla said softly. From the moment he suggested using the quantum entanglement drive, Wei nodded. He understood the physics better than any of us. The inverter required precision that only human guidance could provide. Around them, reconstruction teams were already at work, salvaging what they could from the facility. Earth had won its first interstellar war, but at a terrible cost. Billions dead, cities in ruins, ecosystems devastated. The road to recovery would be long. But they had survived. Not just survived, prevailed against an enemy that had conquered countless worlds before them. What do you think they'll say about us? Layla asked, gazing up at the sky where stars were beginning to appear as evening fell. Out there in the galaxy, about humans. Wei considered the question. They'll say we're dangerous, I suppose, unpredictable, that we accomplished what no other species could. They'll say our fleet was invincible, came a voice behind them. Commander Walsh approached, paying his respects to the memorial. And then humans did the impossible. The three stood in silence for a moment, honoring not just Ravi, but all who had sacrificed in humanity's darkest hour. The quantum theories Ravi developed, Wei said finally. They could revolutionize our understanding of the universe. His work on the inverter was just the beginning. Walsh nodded. Then that will be his legacy, not just saving Earth today, but helping protect it tomorrow. He looked at the two scientists. Humanity is entering a new era. We know now that we're not alone in the universe and that not everything out there is friendly. We'll need minds like yours more than ever. As night fell completely, they looked up at the stars. No longer distant points of light representing abstract scientific curiosity, but real places, some harboring threats, others perhaps harboring allies. The Krell had believed themselves invincible, their technology unmatched, their methods unstoppable. They had never encountered a species that refused to accept the impossible. They had never met humanity before. And now they never would again. Admiral Helena Voss had been in space battles before, but nothing like this. From the bridge of the hastily retrofitted command carrier Resilience, she watched as the remnants of Earth's defense fleet regrouped around her. Ships bearing scorch marks and makeshift repairs, crews exhausted but determined, this was humanity's final stand. Krell forces retreating from Himalayan sector, reported Communications Officer Dieter Hafner, his voice containing a note of disbelief. Engineer Kapoor's device worked. Repeat, the inverter worked. A momentary hush fell over the bridge. Many had thought Kapoor's quantum physics theories were too experimental, too dangerous to deploy. But desperation had pushed humanity beyond conventional tactics. Confirmed, Tactical Officer Jun Park added. Multiple Krell dreadnoughts destroyed, remaining vessels showing signs of disorganization. Helena studied the tactical display carefully. What Engineer Kapoor had accomplished was remarkable, catastrophic damage to the Krell command structure. But the enemy still maintained numerical superiority. Over 200 Krell vessels remained operational, compared to Earth's patchwork fleet of barely 50 combat-capable ships. They're regrouping, she observed, watching as the scattered Krell forces began forming new formations. Slower than before but adapting, Lieutenant Okafor's Nemesis virus is still affecting their coordination, but they're finding workarounds. She turned to her executive officer, Commander Gabriel Torres. Status of Project Thunderbolt. Final preparations complete, Admiral, Torres replied. Dr. Lakshmi confirms the system is operational but untested under combat conditions. Helena nodded grimly. Project Thunderbolt represented the culmination of everything humanity had learned about Krell technology during this brutal war, a desperate fusion of salvaged alien tech with human innovation. Like everything else they'd done, it was experimental, dangerous, and possibly their only chance. The Krell are transmitting again, Dieter announced suddenly, broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through, Helena ordered. The bridge speakers crackled before emitting the now familiar synthesized voice of the Krell command. Humanity, your resistance exceeds predicted parameters. Casualties on both sides are unnecessary. Submit now and selective preservation will be implemented. Helena's expression hardened. Selective preservation, a euphemism for the enslavement of those humans deemed useful, while the rest would be eliminated. No response, she said flatly. Torres looked at her. They're offering terms, Admiral, some might say. They're offering subjugation, Helena cut him off. After everything we've lost, everything we've sacrificed, do you really think humanity would accept living on its knees? The question hung in the air, rhetorical but powerful. Everyone on the bridge had lost someone to the Krell invasion, family, friends, colleagues. Earth's major cities lay in ruins, billions dead. The price of freedom had already been paid in blood. Surrender now would make those sacrifices meaningless. Incoming transmission from Earth Command, Dieter reported. Admiral Yoshida's face appeared on the main screen, the underground command center visible behind him. Admiral Voss, Engineer Kapoor's sacrifice has given us an opening, but our window is closing fast. Strategic analysis indicates the Krell are adapting to our tactics. Agreed, Helena replied. They're forming a new attack formation. I estimate 30 minutes before they launch a coordinated assault on our remaining defenses. Then we have 30 minutes to implement Operation Sunstorm, Yoshida said gravely. Helena felt a chill run down her spine. Operation Sunstorm was Earth's final contingency plan, a last-ditch effort that would either save humanity or finish what the Krell had started. Understood, she replied. Resilience will coordinate the fleet maneuvers. Voss out. As the transmission ended, Helena turned to her bridge crew. Their faces reflected the gravity of the moment, but also resolution. They had all volunteered for this mission knowing the odds. Send to all Earth vessels, she ordered. Operation Sunstorm is now active. Phase 1 begins in 5 minutes. Torres stepped closer, lowering his voice. Admiral, the civilian evacuation of the Northern Hemisphere is only 63% complete, if we proceed now. If we don't proceed now, there won't be any evacuation at all, Helena replied quietly. The Krell have given us no choice. She straightened, addressing the entire bridge. Commander Walsh's tactics surprised them. Lieutenant Okafor's mission confused them. Engineer Kapoor's invention frightened them. Now we're going to show them why humanity should never be underestimated. Operation Sunstorm began with a retreat. Earth's remaining vessels broke orbit simultaneously, appearing to flee in disarray toward the dark side of the moon. It was a convincing performance. Damaged ships venting atmosphere, erratic course corrections, distress calls transmitted on open frequencies. The Krell, still recovering from the havoc wrought by Nemesis and the inverter, hesitated briefly before pursuing. Their formations were less precise than before, but still overwhelmingly powerful. They're taking the bait, Jun reported, as the tactical display showed Krell vessels accelerating after the fleeing human fleet. 87% of their operational vessels have committed to pursuit. Helena nodded. Exactly as Commander Walsh predicted, their tactical algorithms would interpret a mass retreat as an opportunity to eliminate our remaining military assets in a single strike. The human fleet continued its apparent panicked flight, leading the Krell armada into the shadow of Earth's moon. As they passed into the lunar dark side, Helena gave the signal. Initiate Phase 2. Across the scattered fleet, crews implemented the prearranged protocol. Ships killed power to all non-essential systems, minimizing their energy signatures. Emergency launches deployed thousands of decoys, simple devices that mimicked the emissions of damaged human vessels. As the Krell pursued these phantom targets, the actual Earth fleet executed a complex maneuver, doubling back toward a position Commander Walsh had identified, a gravitational anomaly where the Earth and Moon's fields created a unique electromagnetic environment. Position achieved, TORS confirmed. All vessels report ready for Phase 3. Helena took a deep breath, activate Project's Thunderbolts. Deep within the Resilience, Dr. Samira Lakshmi initiated the system she had developed by reverse engineering Krell technology. Unlike Engineer Kapoor's inverter, which manipulated the fundamental properties of space itself, Thunderbolt exploited a vulnerability in the Krell's advanced propulsion systems. Through careful analysis of debris from destroyed Krell ships, Dr. Lakshmi had determined that their faster-than-light drives operated on principles similar to quantum entanglement, linking points in spacetime through an artificial subspace conduit. This allowed for their incredible speed and maneuverability, but also created a potential weakness. Thunderbolt is charging, reported Dr. Lakshmi's voice through the comms. Quantum field generators at 60% capacity and rising. On the bridge, Helena watched the tactical display as the Krell fleet realized they had been deceived. Their pursuit of the decoys abruptly ceased as they began scanning for the real human vessels. They've detected us, Jun warned. Krell fleet changing course. Estimated time to weapons range 3 minutes. Thunderbolt at 85% capacity, came Dr. Lakshmi's update. Need 95% for guaranteed effectiveness. Helena's knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of the tactical table. They're faster than we anticipated. Time to full charge. 2 minutes, 40 seconds. Not enough time. The Krell would be in firing position before Thunderbolt was ready. Admiral Torres said urgently, we need to scatter the fleet, if we remain clustered like this when they arrive. No, Helena interrupted. The quantum resonance field requires our ships to maintain this exact formation. If we break it now, Thunderbolt fails. Incoming, Jun shouted as the first wave of Krell energy weapons lanced through space toward them. The Resilience shuddered as glancing impacts struck its shields. Around them, other ships in the formation reported damage.